Have you ever felt like there's this like hidden current in your life? Something you can't really see, but you can feel it pulling you in certain directions.
Yeah.
And maybe even like causing a few stumbles along the way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are these like unseen forces that are always kind of shaping us? And that's really what we're going to be exploring in this deep dive.
Yeah.
This hidden side, the part of us that kind of operates outside of our conscious awareness. Carl Jung called it the shadow.
The shadow. Okay, so that sounds a little, well, mysterious, maybe a little ominous.
Right.
But when I was looking through the sources, it seems like it's less about like, something sinister and more about like these parts of ourselves that we just haven't really like fully brought into the light. And the big thing that stood out to me was that if you try to ignore it or pretend it's not there, you might just stay stuck.
Yeah.
But if you turn towards it and you really get to know it, that seems to be where all the growth and understanding really happens.
Absolutely. It's not about like confronting an enemy or something.
Right.
But it's more about like getting to know, I don't know, like a neglected neighbor within.
Okay. I love that.
So let's dive into it.
Yeah, let's dive in. So what exactly is this shadow?
Yeah.
Like when Jung was talking about this, what are we actually talking about? What's in it?
So think about the shadow as this like unconscious storehouse, of our personality, all those like thoughts and emotions, even impulses and desires
Yeah.
that we've kind of pushed away or denied because they just don't fit with like the image we want to project.
Oh, so it's like not part of the ideal self.
The ideal self, exactly.
The person we think we're supposed to be.
Exactly.
So it's like those aspects of ourselves that we decided somewhere along the way, they weren't acceptable.
Precisely. And, even from childhood, we're getting all these messages about what's okay and what's not okay, right?
Yeah.
From society, from our families, from our culture. Yeah.
And the sources really highlighted this point about how this conditioning, leads us to label certain feelings like anger or jealousy, maybe even intense joy sometimes.
Yeah.
As like bad or inappropriate.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. Like I remember as a kid, like if I got really excited, if I was like loud and jumping around, I'd always be told to like calm down or behave.
Right, exactly.
So I can see how some of that like natural exuberance probably got shoved down somewhere.
And that's a classic example of how the shadow starts to form. Like over time, all these like unacceptable parts of ourselves, they get like relegated to the unconscious.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Ignoring them doesn't actually make them go away.
Right.
And this is like a key insight from the material.
Yeah.
In fact, it often amplifies their influence,
It's like the more we try to lock those things away, the more power they seem to have, like behind the scenes, to affect us in ways we don't even realize. Exactly. And the sources point out that this can manifest in a bunch of different ways.
Oh, yeah.
Like those moments of self-sabotage where you're like working towards something and then you completely undermine your own progress. Or like fears that just seem to come out of nowhere.
Right.
And even those like disproportionate emotional reactions,
Yeah.
where you're like way later, you're like, why did I get so worked up about that?
Yeah, it's like that thing where it's something small.
Yeah.
You have this huge reaction. You're like, where did that come from? Like a switch just flips and you're like, I don't even recognize myself in that moment.
And that's often the shadow at play. And Jung believed that true self-awareness wasn't about achieving some like flawless ideal.
Right.
It's about acknowledging and actually like integrating the shadow side.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about being whole.
Exactly.
And that's what all the sources were pointing to, that this recognition is really the doorway to like greater emotional freedom and like real personal growth.
Yeah, I think that's really key.
Yeah.
Understanding the shadow isn't about like vanquishing some villain inside of you.
Right.
It's about welcoming a misunderstood part of yourself back into the fold,
Yeah.
It's that crucial first step towards feeling complete. Now that kind of raises the question,
Yeah.
If we're not like born with this fully formed shadow,
right,
how does it actually take shape?
Right, because you don't see a baby like consciously suppressing their anger.
Right.
They're just expressing it.
Yeah.
So it's something that happens over time.
Yeah.
And it seems like it really starts in those early years. Like our childhood really shapes this.
The material highlights this process where we kind of internalize all these unspoken rules about what's acceptable.
Yeah.
And it comes from the people that, shape our early world, parents, teachers, and then eventually like the wider community.
Yeah.
We're constantly absorbing these messages, both explicit and, implicit, about how we should be and how we shouldn't be.
And so to fit in and to feel like loved and accepted,
right,
we learn to kind of hide the parts of ourselves that don't align with what everyone's expecting.
Yeah.
Because it's almost a survival mechanism.
It is, yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
And
the sources gave some like really good examples of this process in action.
Oh, yeah.
Like think about a kid who's really inquisitive and like always asking why.
Yeah.
And they're repeatedly told to like stop asking so many questions or just be quiet, you know?
Yeah.
They start to associate curiosity with being like a nuisance.
Yeah.
And over time, that part of them, that curiosity, can get pushed down and become part of the shadow.
That's a great example, yeah. I remember reading about that example about the kid who gets scolded for crying.
Oh.
That was really powerful to me.
Yeah.
Because that message, that like showing your vulnerability is weak, can have such lasting consequences.
Yeah, and our sources even touched on the potential long-term effects of that kind of emotional repression.
Oh, wow.
Mentioning things like increased stress and anxiety.
Wow.
Even like physical health problems.
So it can actually manifest physically.
Yeah, it can. So it really just drives home that point that like what we push down doesn't just vanish, it continues to kind of exert influence.
And it's not just about like suppressing like the so-called negative emotions. I remember that the material also talked about how the shadow can form from like admiring qualities in other people that we don't think we have ourselves.
Yeah, that's another layer to it.
Yeah.
Like if you, for example, envy someone's confidence or their creativity, that kind of suggests that those qualities aren't like necessarily absent in us. But maybe we've decided that they're just not part of who we are.
Yeah, or we're not capable of it.
Exactly, yeah.
Those potential parts of ourselves get pushed down too.
Right into the shadow.
So it seems like it's either things that we're told are bad or things that we admire but we don't think we have. But the act of like suppressing it or deciding that's not me seems to be the common thread.
That's a great point, yeah. And the really important thing to remember is that these denied parts don't just disappear. No. They stay active in our unconscious, shaping our thoughts and behaviors and relationships. Yeah. And the more energy we spend denying them, the more power they seem to have.
So it's like they're waiting in the wings to make their appearance at the worst possible moment.
Right.
Okay, so we have a picture now of what the shadow is and how it like gets created.
Yeah.
Now, the big question is, how do we face it?
Right.
Because that sounds like kind of a journey into the unknown.
It does require some courage. It's about turning towards the aspects of ourselves that we've avoided or suppressed or been afraid of.
Yeah.
But the reward is huge.
Yeah.
You get a much deeper and more authentic understanding of who you are.
So where do we even start?
Yeah.
Like, I know that in the sources there were like 5 practical methods for how to like start engaging with this.
Right.
So maybe we can just go through those one by one.
Yeah.
The first one was self-observation without judgment.
Yeah.
And that just feels like such a foundational piece.
I think it is, yeah. It's really about cultivating this ability to observe your inner world with a sense of like detachment without immediately labeling things good or bad.
Right.
So the key is to pay attention to the emotions that tend to trigger you. Anger, jealousy, fear, resentment.
Yeah.
And when those come up really strong, that's when the sources encourage us to ask, why does this bother me so much? Is there something I'm rejecting in myself?
That's such a powerful shift.
Yeah.
Because our natural inclination is to focus on like the other person, the situation, the external thing that triggered it.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is all about turning it inwards. And the thing about projection is so important here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's that idea that we see in other people. The very things that we can't accept in ourselves.
Exactly. And the material gave some great examples of this.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Like, let's say you're constantly irritated by someone's arrogance. Maybe you're suppressing your own desire for recognition or confidence, right? Yeah. Or you feel this pang of envy at someone's success. Could it be that you're overlooking your own talents?
Wow.
It's like the shadow is using the world as a mirror to show us what we don't want to see directly.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, the second one that really resonated with me was journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people journal for different reasons.
Right.
But how does it help with this shadow work specifically?
Well, the sources describe journaling as like a mirror for the unconscious. Okay.
So the act of actually writing down your thoughts and feelings can help to bring those hidden patterns and emotions into view.
Yeah.
They suggest some really cool prompts.
Oh, yeah.
Like moments when you had a really strong emotional reaction, or paying attention to recurring themes or symbols in your dreams.
Oh, interesting.
Which Jung believed were like direct communications from the unconscious.
Wow.
And writing about like the parts of yourself that you feel ashamed of or that you hide.
So it's about, again, approaching it with curiosity.
Yes.
And not with that harsh inner critic.
Oh, okay.
It's about looking at the shadow as this part of ourselves that's just looking for understanding.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, the third one was about embracing difficult emotions.
Yeah, that one's tough for a lot of people.
Oh, huge. I mean, who wants to willingly sit with anger and sadness?
Right.
It just seems so counterintuitive.
But the sources advise against this urge to avoid. They say to actually sit with those feelings.
Allow yourself to really experience them.
Okay.
Like if anger comes up,
Yeah.
instead of pushing it down or lashing out, you can ask yourself, what is this anger trying to tell me? Or if fear comes up, gently explore where it came from. The idea is that our emotions, even the difficult ones, carry important information, and that can reveal deeper truths.
So it's like they're messengers in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of these things to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Okay, the fourth one was shadow work exercises.
Yeah.
What exactly are those?
Well, the sources highlighted a couple of techniques. One is dialoguing with your shadow. Oh. So you basically have a conversation with this ignored or suppressed part of yourself. Like, what would it say if it could talk? Yeah. What does it need?
Wow, that's really interesting.
The other one they mentioned was using meditation or guided visualization. Correct. Maybe create a mental image of your shadow and practice accepting it, even embracing it.
Wow.
Rather than pushing it away.
Those sound really powerful.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, and the fifth one, I think this is so important, is seeking safe spaces for exploration.
Yes, because doing this work alone can be really challenging.
Yeah, it can bring up a lot of stuff.
Right. So it's crucial to have support. And the sources specifically mentioned a few things, like therapy, obviously, working with a therapist, having a trusted mentor, or even joining a support group. Yeah. Those can provide so much help. Yeah. A safe space to process what comes up.
And were there any specific types of therapy that they mentioned?
Yeah, they talked about Jungian analysis, inner child work, and mindfulness practices.
Okay, so there are specific modalities that can really help.
Yes.
Okay, so it seems like the big takeaway from this section is that facing your shadow isn't about eliminating it.
No.
It's about bringing it into the light.
Integrating it.
And becoming whole.
Exactly.
More self-aware. And ultimately more emotionally free.
Exactly. And I think now that we have a better understanding of how to do that, the next step is to explore what happens when we actually accept it.
Yeah, because I think when people hear the word shadow, they automatically think negative.
Right. But the sources were really clear that it's just the unseen, unacknowledged parts of ourselves.
So what happens when we shift from rejecting the shadow to accepting it?
Oh, that shift is powerful.
Yeah.
It can be so liberating.
Wow.
It's like the material really laid out the costs of repressing the shadow and the freedom that comes with embracing it.
So let's talk about the costs first. Like what happens when we keep it locked away?
Okay, so the sources talk about a few things. There's this constant emotional exhaustion because you're fighting yourself all the time, right?
Yeah.
And that can lead to self-doubt, feeling like you're never good enough.
And the material talked about, like, repeating unhealthy patterns.
Yes, in relationships.
Yeah.
And in your behavior.
And projection.
Projection. Oh,
yeah. Blaming other people for the things we don't like about ourselves.
And self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Where you're, like, working against yourself.
And then those emotional outbursts.
Yes, where it all just comes out.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, so that's, like, a recipe for disaster.
Pretty much, yeah.
So what's the positive side?
Well, on the other hand, accepting your shadow brings more emotional balance and stability.
Because you're not being controlled by it anymore.
Exactly.
Okay.
You also get a much deeper self-understanding. You see your triggers, your patterns.
And you can start to live authentically.
Exactly.
Because you don't have to pretend anymore.
And there's a great analogy that I loved.
Oh, yeah.
It compared the shadow to a neglected child that's knocking at your door looking for attention. And you have two choices. Ignore it, which just leads to more inner turmoil, or open the door and welcome it in.
Which can lead to healing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's important to say that integration doesn't mean acting out on every impulse.
No, definitely not.
It's not about like suddenly becoming aggressive or doing harmful things.
It's about recognizing.
Yeah.
And understanding.
And choosing how to channel it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the examples in the material were really helpful.
Oh, yeah. Like what stood out to you?
Well, like with anger. Instead of suppressing it, it can be channeled into assertiveness.
Oh, that's a good one.
Like setting healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And with jealousy, it can be a motivator to improve ourselves.
Instead of just staying stuck in the resentment.
And even fear can be a signal that we need to grow.
Yes, or to get support.
And the text even mentioned that a lot of really influential people throughout history, they were aware of their shadow.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And they integrated it.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting that can actually be a source of strength.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it sounds like self-acceptance isn't about being perfect.
No.
It's about embracing all of it.
All of it, yeah.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah.
And becoming whole.
Yeah, I love that.
And stepping into our full potential.
Absolutely. And that leads to the final stage, which is how do we actually use this?
Yeah, because acceptance is great. But how do we take it a step further and improve our lives?
Right.
Okay, so the sources had 5 strategies.
Yeah.
And the first one was so interesting to me. Reframing the shadow as a teacher.
Oh, I love that one.
Because it totally changes the dynamic.
It does.
It's not the enemy anymore.
Right.
It's like a source of wisdom.
Yeah, and the sources encourage us to ask, what is my shadow trying to teach me? And how can I use this awareness to make better choices?
Yeah.
You know?
And I loved that example about suppressed assertiveness.
Yeah.
Because that can come out as...
That's passive aggression.
Yes.
Resentment.
Yeah, and then you realize, I need to set some boundaries.
Exactly.
The second one was finding healthy ways to express those shadow aspects.
Right. So we're building on that idea of channeling the energy.
Yeah, so it's not just about recognizing it. It's like, okay, what do I do with this now?
Exactly. And the material gave some good examples.
Yeah.
Like how anger can become assertive communication. Fear can motivate you to prepare.
Jealousy can inspire you to pursue your own goals.
Exactly. So it's about taking those energies and doing something constructive.
Yeah. The third one was creative outlets for shadow integration.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And I find this one to be so powerful.
Me too.
You know, art, writing, music.
Anything creative.
All of it.
Yeah.
It's like a safe space to explore those deeper parts.
Yeah.
And so many artists throughout history, they've taken their struggles and turned them into masterpieces.
Exactly.
So whether it's journaling or music or dance, it allows us to process and express those hidden parts.
The fourth one was interesting. It's about bringing this into our daily life.
Yeah. Shadow awareness every day.
Yeah.
So this sounds like a mindfulness practice.
It is. It's about being intentional. The sources suggested paying attention to your emotional reactions, especially those strong ones.
And being mindful about judging other people.
Yeah, that's probably projection.
Right.
And then using your triggers as opportunities for self-reflection.
So it's turning everyday life into a classroom.
Exactly.
And then finally, the fifth one is self-compassion.
Yeah, that's so crucial.
So important and so often overlooked.
Yeah, because self-acceptance is key, but we need self-compassion to actually extend that acceptance to ourselves.
Right. Especially when we're facing these difficult things.
Exactly. And the sources really emphasized treating ourselves with kindness. Understanding, forgiveness.
Yeah.
The goal is not to be perfect.
Right.
It's to be whole.
Okay, so to recap, understanding the shadow isn't about fighting it. It's about recognizing and accepting it.
And integrating it.
And becoming whole.
Exactly.
So by doing this, we become more self-aware, more emotionally free.
More empowered.
Yes, and it's a journey.
It's a journey, not a destination.
And each step brings us closer to our true selves.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah. That's really beautiful.
So the question for you listening is, are you ready to embrace all of who you are?
The seen and the unseen.
The light and the shadow.
All of it.
All of it.